October, the best month in the baseball season because we have the World Series, the Houston Astros versus the Philadelphia Phillies. Those are the two representatives for each league for this year's 2022 World Series. Hi, everybody. Will Talent here alongside me, Andrew Mendez. And we haven't been on the show in a little bit, Andrew. It's the first time we're doing it in about a month, maybe a little longer than that. We're both busy guys at school doing our own thing, but there's a lot to talk about in the world of baseball. This is it. It comes down to this series, and it's a good one. The Houston Astros and the Philadelphia Phillies, two teams, two very different storylines. The Houston Astros, the powerhouse of the American League, and then the Philadelphia Phillies, the feel-good underdogs of the National League. It's going to be very interesting to see how this series unfolds and what we can take out of it. But Andrew and I, we're going to bring everything to the table that you need to know before we go to game one and potentially a game 5, 6, 7. We're going to break it all down on this episode of the Free Baseball Pod. But Andrew, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to preview the series. We've been waiting all week. No game Monday, no games Tuesday. Today's Thursday. Finally, tomorrow night, we get to start. And let me just say, I don't think anyone was. Maybe people inside the Phillies organization, maybe their family members, maybe people who were very confident in them. I don't think anyone expected the Phillies to be here. The Astros, on the other hand, a lot of people did. Astros were by far the number one team in the AL. So the Astros back in the World Series, fourth time in the last 6 years. They haven't lost a game this postseason yet. They're going to be tough to beat, but the Phillies are hot. They have looked very good on offense, averaging about 5-6 runs a game. And it's going to be a fun World Series. I hope so, just because how hot the Phillies have been. But the Astros are the much better team.
Well, the World Series is always fun, especially in the beginning because of the lead up. Sometimes the series itself isn't fun, and that could definitely happen in this series with the Astros being just as dominant as they are. Like I said, they're the powerhouse of the American League. And as you said, Andrew, nobody expected the Phillies to be in this position, including myself. I had them winning 87 games. They did win 87 games, but I also had them missing the playoffs way back when we did that. I don't even remember when that was, probably March. They won 87 games. They were able to squeeze out a wild card spot, and they pulled a very baseball card. You get hot at the right time. You find a way to get into the postseason. Kind of what this series is, the wild card series. I mean, that's the whole purpose of it. When you have a kind of a fringe team, they can still make it, and they made it, and it's just kind of all luck from there. And the Phillies have ran with that luck. They took down the NL Central winning Cardinals. They took down the NL East rival Atlanta Braves in 4 games. I'm sorry. And then in the NLCS, they just made very quick and easy work of the San Diego Padres. They took down 3 very good baseball teams. Obviously, if they were in the playoffs, they have to be pretty good. But 3 very complete teams, and their path to the World Series is very different than Houston's. Houston just kind of plowed their way through the whole regular season. They were the undisputable best team in the American League when it was all said and done. You could argue that the Yankees were at that level at one point, but once they played the Yankees, they showed why they are just so much better and why they swept them in 4 games in the American League Championship Series. Andrew, you said they didn't lose a single game to begin their postseason, and this team is definitely constructed in a way in which that is so incredibly easy for them.
Yeah, they're a great team top to bottom. They won 106 games. They have great starting pitching, incredible top of the bullpen, even bullpen depth, and their lineup. It might not be the best in the league, but any given night they can put up 7-8 runs on you. And let me just say this before we start talking about the actual series. I don't think there's ever been a team. I could be wrong. Correct me if you know. I didn't do any research on this. I don't know if there's ever been a team that fired their manager during the season and won the World Series in the same year. The Phillies were 21-29 after the first 2 months. A few days after that, they fired Joe Girardi. Immediately won 14 of 16 games, got into the wild card, and here they are.
Yeah, I don't know if there's been any instances. There probably has been instances in which a manager has been fired and then his position has been filled, and they go on at least to the World Series, maybe even one. We'll have to fact check that. But very similar. This team, you and agree with or disagree with me here, Drew. It's very similar to that 2019 Nationals team. They didn't fire their manager, but they were so out of it early, and there was talk of turnover for the managerial position. Dave Martinez, it was looking bleak. His job was looking almost certainly very open at that same mark that you just mentioned where the Phillies were at during the 2019 season. They went on and won the World Series after being very mediocre in the first 2 months. They just kind of flipped the switch and turned it on. And the Phillies, they in the regular season didn't do that. They didn't like just turn the switch on. They were kind of just subpar the whole season, as the Phillies just have been over the last 10 years. And in September, they hit a little bit of a stride. They weren't like off the page amazing, but they did the bare minimum to get to where they're at. And in the postseason, they just took over, and everyone on that team has stepped up. When you watch the postseason, you watch the Phillies, that is the prime example. That team is the prime example of how you win in the MLB postseason. You get hot, everything starts clicking at the same time. You do the little things right, something that a lot of teams like the New York Yankees didn't do. Doing the little things right in the postseason, you'll get to where you need to be, and that's exactly what the Phillies have done.
Well, I completely agree with most of the things you just said. And also, let's just say, like the Phillies, if we look at these teams, if we want to look at their regular season performances, we're going to be like, okay, Astros got the series. But in the playoffs, I don't think these teams, their play has been
It's a different element.
You can
Playoffs are a different element.
I would argue, even though the Astros have yet to lose a game, that the Phillies have been better than the Astros this postseason.
You could make that argument, because if you look at the games that the Astros have played, they were trailing by big time with their ace on the mound against the wild card Seattle Mariners, and they just somehow, but this also is an example of what the Phillies did, doing the little things right. They found a way to get back into those games against the Mariners in which they were losing and then come out victorious. They basically played a 4-game series, even though they swept Seattle. Played an 18-inning game to clinch the American League Division Series and move on to the championship series. This team, they're not this powerhouse they were in 2017, 2018, 2019. Obviously, in 2018, the Red Sox were that powerhouse, but Houston was still a very good ball club. 2019, arguably, was a better team than that 2017, in my opinion. You had stars all over the diamond. And stars who just, they're not there anymore. They are not with the Astros, but still a good amount of that core is there. If you look at Verlander, Yuli Gurriel, Alex Bregman, and Jose Altuve, you don't throw Jordan in, you don't throw in Kyle Tucker. They weren't there yet. Those 4 players I just mentioned, that's their core. And those guys have helped them get to where they're at. They've been to 4 World Series in the last 6 years, 2 consecutively. They run the American League. It's just cool to see. We all know what happened in 2017. That it's never going to go away. This will hopefully, if they end up pulling out of this series victorious, this will hopefully maybe change the minds of some of baseball's fans that are just so adamant about this cheating scandal. I don't know about you, Drew, but I'm so tired of hearing about it. It's becoming a very exhausted headline for me. It's like, I get it. They were banging on trash cans. You could say that's what helped them win. It obviously did. The numbers line up. That team was very good and won the World Series. Yes, they cheated, but that same team has continued with less core players. They've continued their success in the postseason. They haven't won, but this team just they're so strong. Even the games against the Yankees, I kind of got off track a little bit, but the games were close. The games were so close that that's the thing the Astros do, though. They do things the right way. They do the little things the right way. I can't stress that enough. If you do the little things the right way in the MLB postseason, you're going to be, you could say, immortalized. You're going to be a headline. You're going to be a topic for specific postseason runs, and stay tuned for that. We'll have a little snippet on that in future shows on fun postseason events, things that have gone on. And who knows? We may have to throw something from this World Series in there if a moment warrants it. But stay tuned for that. But Drew, yeah, do the little things right. You'll end up in the World Series.
First of all, I want to say I completely agree with what you said about the cheating scandal. Yes, they did cheat. No, that did not make them a great team. They were already a great team. That definitely did give them an advantage. And if they didn't do it in 2019 and the team was even better, and they ran into a little bit of that team of destiny, I'd say, in the Washington Nationals, and then made the World Series. They've made 6 straight ALCS. You don't do that by luck. They're
You have to be good. You
yeah.
just have to be flat out good.
And one analogy that I heard is they're the Guardians for this year, where they don't strike out, they put the ball in play, except they also can do the things that the Yankees do, where they hit home runs. So they're the team, and we saw in the last series against the Yankees. The Yankees, they're not built for the postseason. They're a regular season team, and every year it comes to the postseason and they flop. But the Astros, their team is set up perfectly to face postseason pitching and postseason hitting.
It is. And that's one thing with the Yankees that those dynasty teams had that this team just doesn't have. They have that overall consistency from April to the end of September, and they kept that consistency in October, and then when needed, they went above and beyond. Nobody on that Yankees team stays consistent in October. Even Aaron Judge, the whole team was just flat-footed. It was very surprising that they ended up winning that division series with everything that was going on and how they were playing. That's just a testament to how strong that Yankees team really is. And that team could be in the Astros spot right now, but they didn't do the things that the Astros did. They don't have that consistency. They don't have that spark plug. The Astros always had a spark plug. Jose Altuve was that spark plug. Was he that spark plug this year? Absolutely not. That was Jeremy Pena. Jeremy Pena was that spark plug. When you have guys that can come in and out of positions, you just lost your franchise shortstop in Carlos Correa. He's gone. The guy that replaced him in the biggest way, and then was the ALCS MVP. So that's just something with the Astros that I'm not going to keep hating on the Yankees, that no team in baseball has. That's because the Astros are the best. They're the best in the American League. They've been the best for a while now. Even in 2020, this team was under 500. Obviously, a special season, but this team was under 500. They were down 3-0 in the American League Championship Series and forced a Game 7. And like you said, Drew, things like that just don't happen with luck. We could talk about the Astros and how good that team really is. We could talk about the whole situation with the Astros for hours, for days, for months, whatever you want to do. But we got to get into this series. And Drew, let's start off with the starting pitching. Let's start off with Game 1 specifically. You have Justin Verlander and you have Aaron Nola. Verlander, not great in the postseason so far. Nola has really turned it on, probably since the All-Star break. Really phenomenal year all around, and he's really thrown well in this postseason so far.
Yeah, Verlander, like you mentioned, wasn't great in the first start against the Mariners. He was good against the Yankees, though. And just to talk about, not that this matters too much, but in his career, 38 innings in the World Series, not a great World Series pitcher. We saw against the Nationals 2019, not great then. 5.68 ERA, but here's a cool stat. He is the second pitcher ever to start a World Series game in 3 different decades. He started a game in 2006 for the Tigers, and then obviously he had his starts with the Tigers and the Nationals in last decade, and then 2020s. So he was 23 years old in 2006, and he now is 39 years old, which is pretty crazy considering he was a Cy Young favorite. So if you're an Astros fan, don't worry too much about the World Series. Just worry about how he's been this postseason, which has been good and bad. And then I don't know if you want to say anything more about Verlander for me.
Well, yeah, Verlander. That's one thing that's such a hard conversation because there's such a bigger sample size in the regular season. However, the postseason, that's why it has post in front of it. It's its own season. Verlander is historically not good in the playoffs. He he's already given up, I believe it's over 10 earned runs in this postseason, and he's only had 2 starts. It's not like he's thrown a lot of innings. And he's been to how many World Series? Let's see, 06, 2012, 2017, 2019, 21, and now 22. This is going to be his 6th World Series and only has 1 ring. And it's really tough to see, especially for a guy of our generation. He's one of the best pitchers in our generation. And the fact that he can't perform at the highest stage is like, it definitely hits the legacy. It's not gonna affect anything for his Hall of Fame case. But when you look back on it, it's like this guy was just not that good in the postseason. And this is definitely a game they're gonna need him to step up for. It's in Houston. So I think advantage here is definitely Houston. He's your ace. He's your ace for a reason. He's won a Cy Young. He's won 3 Cy Youngs, one at plus 35. He was over 35 years old. I think he was, what is he now? 39, 38? He's 39. So he won that when he was 37. So but he still obviously has a lot left in the tank. I think he's going to be okay. It's really hard to gauge what he's going to do specifically because you just look at the numbers and he's just not that amazing. But he's Justin Verlander. He's the ace of this Houston Astros staff for a reason. I think they start this series off 1-0 against the Phillies. And I think it's going to be really hard for Philly to get a win in Houston. It's hard for anybody to win at Minute Maid Park.
Yeah, definitely. And also Verlander, another thing I'll say is I feel like when he struggles in the postseason, it's usually early. We saw it against the Yankees in 2019, and we've seen it in the World Series against the Nationals. And we even saw it his first start of the postseason, which let me just correct you. It has not been 10 runs. It's only been 7 runs. In 2
It's
games.
been 7? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been only
It's
7
been
runs.
7. It's still
But
7 in 2 starts. That's a lot.
It was only one bad start, really. Yankees one was pretty dominant. But the one against the Mariners, he looked pretty shaky early on.
Yeah.
And I just hope, well, I'm not saying I hope. If you're an Astros fan, you hope that doesn't get too much in his head and he just treats it like a normal start. Not a normal
Yeah, well, the Yankees were a normal start. You know, that's a much stronger offense than the Seattle Mariners, and the Mariners made him look like he was throwing BP. The Yankees, they couldn't do anything on him. So maybe that's how you have to base it on. It was his first start in the postseason since last year, obviously. I was blanking for a minute because I forgot when he got Tommy John surgery, but he came back. Actually, no, didn't he? Did he miss last year?
Bit last year.
A little bit, right? Was he in? I
don't think.
Was he on that
playoffs?
No, right? But anyway, though, it's still he's had many moments where he's needed to come up big when the lights are shining really bright. So if you're the Astros, you have to look at that game against the Yankees in which he absolutely dominated. He made that lineup look very, very silly. And it was a Justin Verlander start. It was a typical Justin Verlander start. So if you're the Astros, you have to bank on that again and hopefully get a game 1 victory. But now let's shift over to the Phillies. We look at Aaron Nola. We look at the scrappy underdog Phillies. And realistically, Drew, I think they could squeeze a game out in Houston, just one. And that could push the series to 6 games, 7 games, maybe. It's just very tough. I think their one win that I give them for my prediction will come in Philly. I don't think that they win a game in Houston to start, but when you have a 1-2 like Nola and Wheeler, they make the case, and they've definitely been making that case in this postseason.
Yeah, I think game 1 obviously sets the tone. So I think if the Phillies win game 1, it shifts. I don't want to sound like a broken record because I think a lot of people say this: you win game 1, you have a big advantage. But for the Phillies, most importantly, if you steal game 1 against Verlander, and then you go into game 2 with Zach Wheeler, I think that boosts their odds from about 20% if they win it to about 60% if they.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. The way I know this Phillies team they've played better than that Yankees team that was just eliminated by the Astros. But that Yankees team was a stronger team than the Phillies, and they looked horrible against the Astros against the same pitching. And when you go Verlander, Framber, games 1 and 2, that's a big 1-2 punch. And then you go to Philly and you have Christian Javier. Maybe we see Jose Urquidy, probably not, probably be in the bullpen. Then you have Lance McCullers, you have Luis Robert, no, Luis Garcia, Luis Garcia. That's another thing with the Astros, why they're so good. I named 5 different starting pitchers that they can throw out there. And as Dusty Baker, you can have a boat of confidence and say, yeah, we can win this game with him on the mound. And 2 of those guys are going to be in the bullpen.
Yeah, like the fact that the Astros have these tough relievers. I mean, the Phillies do have Zach Eflin in the bullpen also, but their starting rotation is so deep that they can just pull out Jose Urquidy if Verlander's struggling in the 3rd inning, and just throw out him
Right.
for 4 or 5 innings. Not that I mean, only issue is that he might not be stretched out for that. But yeah, like we said, the bullpen depth, starting pitching depth, the pitching is what makes the Astros above and beyond the 106 win team. But let's just talk about Aaron Nola a bit as we talked about Verlander. He started off pretty good his first 2 starts against the Cardinals, 6 innings pitched, 4 hits, no runs, 6 innings, 5 hits, one run unearned against the Braves, and then got roughed up a little bit against the Padres. He's a very high strikeout pitcher, doesn't walk a lot, doesn't give a lot of home runs. So, I mean, the Astros are gonna struggle a little bit, I think, against Nola. But it all comes down to will they get that one big hit? Can they get a home run with runners on base? I don't see them string together many hits, but the Padres did it, so we'll see.
It's gonna be a very back and forth game 1, I think. I think these pitchers, they don't get roughed up, but there will be some runs scored. And ultimately, it goes down to Houston. I think Houston, as they've shown, and not just this postseason, but in all 6 that they've made the American League Championship Series, in all 6 of those postseasons in a row, they've had a big moment in which someone has come up and given a big hit. This year, you could say that was Alex Bregman against the Yankees. That game, that go-ahead hit in Game 4 in 2021. I can't name one off the top of my head, but there was probably one of those moments. Carlos Correa in 2020 with the home run, the walk-off home run in San Diego. 2019, Altuve off of Chapman. The list just goes on and on. George Springer in 2017, that World Series he had was phenomenal. There's going to be a guy that shows up for the Astros. It could be Yordan Alvarez. It could be Chas McCormick. It doesn't matter who it is. They have those guys. Jeremy Pena too. They just have these guys that come up in these big moments. And the Phillies, they have had those big moments too. But the reason I give advantage Houston here is because they've done it so many different times in consecutive years. The Phillies are hot right now. They're hot for this postseason. But the Astros consistently every single year pull off magic like the Phillies have every year.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, you were talking about, you think there's going to be there has to be that one guy, unless a bunch of different guys step up and they just blow them out. But if there's going to be that one guy who steps up with a big hit in games 1 and 2, who do you think it'll be? Because I think it'll be Kyle Tucker.
For Houston or for Philly?
For Houston.
For Houston, Kyle Tucker's a good one. I want to see him get going a little bit. He had a great season. Ooh, I think I'm going to go with Altuve. Just because he's kind of at like a buy now price if you look at it in like a stock way, because he's had a terrible postseason. He has maybe 1 hit. Is it 1 hit? Is it 2 hits? Yeah, I know he got his first hit against the Yankees. Yeah, and it was a double late in the game. I think it was game 4. So I'm going to go with Altuve because of that buy low, sell high kind of motto here. He's a clutch player. He's just not playing well right now. He's a clutch player. He lives for the big moment. He comes through in the big moment. So I would go with Altuve if there is some kind of theatrical performance happening in game 1, maybe even game 2.
Yeah, I can't say I hate that pick. As a Yankees fan, every time I see Altuve in a big spot, I just know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So who knows?
You
Maybe
you just know.
yeah, it's bound to happen. We knew what in 20 last year when Chad Green was facing him in the regular season game before the All-Star break, we just knew he was gonna hit the walk-off home run. It was just
Yeah. hmm
now
Yeah, the Yankees were up what 7-0 that game too, or
yeah,
something
like
something crazy like that.
to the ninth inning.
Yeah, and they scored 6 runs and won the game.
Yeah.
This is what Altuve does. It's what he does. He lives for the moment. He's had big moments before, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has another one.
All right. I'm gonna go top. I'm saying Kyle Tucker just because of big lot of. They're not saying he's the only lefty in the lineup. I'll say Yordan Alvarez, but two righty pitchers. First two.
Yeah.
So now moving on, as I mentioned, first two games. Game two is another great pitching matchup, as we talked about. Framber Valdez versus Zach Wheeler. Two very different, results type pitchers. Framber Valdez, not saying he doesn't strike anyone out, but he is a very heavy ground ball pitcher, one of the heaviest ground ball pitchers in the league. I'm not sure if he's number one. I think I heard something that he might be, which is interesting because the Phillies this postseason have been a very home run heavy team. So we'll see how that balances out. And then Zach Wheeler, the opposite. Not not saying he doesn't induce a ton of ground balls because he's Zach Wheeler and he's one of the best pitchers in baseball.
But he's a big
But
strikeout arm now.
he's a big strikeout guy and a low walk guy. And actually, in his first 4 starts, he has the best WHIP in postseason history with a 0.513 WHIP.
Wow. See, that's why I like the Astros even more that you say that. Because you look at Nolan, you look at Wheeler, very similar styles of pitching. Wheeler, I would say he probably throws harder than Nola, but they both do not walk a ton of guys. Aaron Nola walked like less than 30 guys this year and struck out like over. Let me see. It was 235, and he walked 29 guys. Like that's big time. Zach Wheeler, similar numbers for sure. That's the thing with the Astros. They have two very similar arms like that. One of them is at least gonna get hit because the Astros are gonna figure them out. If it's an Aaron Nola, the Phillies are in trouble because they already figured out a very similar arm. Now they throw different pitches. Zach Wheeler uses more of a cutter. Aaron Nola uses that two-seam sinking fastball. So two different kinds of fastballs being thrown at you, but a very similar approach when you're on the mound. If you're Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler, you get strikeouts. You don't let guys on base for free. The Astros will capitalize on that. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, I'm gonna say if the Astros, like we said, if the Phillies can take one of these two games, which is gonna be very tough against Framber Valdez and JV, that they're feeling pretty good because these two guys are not nearly on the same caliber as the rest of the guys, which we'll talk about in a second. So Phillies, you have Wheeler, you have Nola. Don't waste your starts, or else it's pretty much over.
Yeah, I would say so. The momentum is completely in the Astros' favor there, and then you have to face Lance McCullers. I mean, I'm not even saying he's starting game 3, but you're gonna have to face him when you go to Philly. You're gonna have to face Christian Javier too, and then by that time, who knows where the series is gonna be at? They may squeeze out one win in Philly. The Phillies might. Then you got to face Justin Verlander all over again. So it's going to be a very tough matchup for the Phillies, but it's going to be very cool to watch. I want to see how Bryce Harper competes in his first World Series. I'm very pumped for Harper. He hit that big home run against the Padres in the 8th inning to give them that lead to ultimately send them to the World Series. So it's a very fun matchup. There's always a lot of things that you can pull out of these rosters and be like, yeah, I like this, I like that, I like the other thing. It's very fun. You have two very different teams too. That's what makes it cool. When it's the same kind of team, it can also be cool, but it just makes it more interesting when you have two very different backgrounds from the two different leagues.
And it's interesting too because I'd say the starting pitching from these teams is very leveled because I think
Yeah.
the Astros definitely have more depth because Ranger Suarez, Noah Syndergaard, not on the same level I'd say as Chris.
I don't think Syndergaard's getting a start. I don't think he gets a
I
start
don't.
in the
Yeah,
series. I don't think the Phillies can afford that.
I don't even know who starts Game 4. Then I don't. Maybe Zach Eflin.
They may go 3-man rotation because if they win it, if they can steal a game in Houston, you got to go 3-man rotation. You need Wheeler and Nola right back in there, especially if one of them gives you a win and you can maybe squeeze a win with Ranger Suarez and you have that 2-1 advantage. You need Wheeler and Nola back out there as soon as possible.
Yeah,
one of them may make 3 starts if it goes 7.
I get what you're saying, but you can't, even though they've had some rest, you can't have Nola coming out throwing game 4.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Who you're gonna throw Zach Eflin over Aaron Nola? What if they're down 3-0? Then you have to throw Nola. You have no other choice.
Have Nola available. I don't know if you start him in that game.
Maybe it's the last game of the season. If you're the Phillies and you're down 3-0, it's the last game of the season. You need one of your top dogs, and your one top dog is gonna have more rest than your other top dog. This is where the Astros continuously just show how strong they are, because they could go 1, 2, 3, 4 and not use a single other starting pitcher like they did against the Yankees. They had 4 different starting pitchers. Nobody had to make another start. The Astros can do that, and realistically, they can have 5 different starting pitchers out there for games 1 through 5, and then go back into the rotation and still have an advantage in the series.
I disagree. I still disagree. I don't think they go to Nola unless it's 3-0. If it is 3-0, I think they go with Nola. If it's 2-1, if they're down 2-1, they're up 2-1. I don't think they're gonna go with Nola that early. So they're gonna have to go Syndergaard, bullpen.
I'm Rob Thompson. I'm going Aaron Nola. I'm going Nola.
I'm saving him for game 5, but like we already covered pretty much all of them. So let's just say, who are you taking first? Let's just go to our predictions. What you got, Will?
Predictions, like specifically though, for the series, just in general. I got Houston in 5. I think Philly squeezes 1 win out at Citizens Bank Park, but that's really going to be it. I don't think this series is going to be 7 games. It's not going to be something that we're going to talk about for the next 30, 40 years. I don't really see that happening whatsoever. And quite frankly, it could end up being like something we saw in 2012 with the Tigers and the Giants. I think the Astros are really going to take care of business here and show why they are the World Series champions and why they're going to continue to be at the pinnacle of the American League.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the same exact prediction, Astros in 5. And if I had to lean towards Astros in 6 or Astros in 4, I'd probably say Astros in 4.
I would say Astros in 4 over 6 any day of the week.
Yeah,
any day of the week.
Because the Phillies been a fun, magical team. But
fun.
I just get that feeling that we're gonna be watching, and the Astros are gonna be dominating, and there's 1 or 2 close games that we're gonna be like, yep, this is what we expected. And for MVP, I mentioned him earlier. I'm gonna go with Kyle Tucker.
Kyle Tucker for your MVP. I like that. I don't know if I'll go with Altuve. I think I'm going to go with Alex Bregman here. I think Altuve will have big moments, but I think Bregman has a good series. He finished the ALCS strong. I think he continues that into the World Series and ultimately gives himself World Series MVP and the second World Series title in the Houston Astros franchise history.